Hey everybody, happy Saturday. How's it going? How's it going, Pseudo?
It is going well. Cannot complain. It's a decent day outside, nice and sunny. You know,
Yeah, looks
good old
nice
Saturdays, get to sleep in.
Little smoky, but not too bad. Not too bad. We don't have a rage today. We're all very sad by that. Hey Flash, nice to have you with us. How's your weekend going, buddy? Hope you're good. Yeah, no rage as you see. Big hole down there. And that's a big hole that's hard to fill. So we're not going to try, but we are going to carry on without him. He may join us later. He may not. He's not feeling well. If he's up to it, we're happy to get him. Going good. What about you? Oh man, my day's been crazy. I was supposed to start 8 minutes ago. 8 minutes might not sound like a lot, but I start on the minute. That's how we do it here. I don't like being late. So I was just all over the place. But I set up the new intro screen. I really like it. What do you guys think? What did you think? Thanks. I love me some Sekiro. Yeah, when I have everything automated, so when I swap to the intro screen to show it to you, it muted all the mic stuff so you can't hear me during pre-show. I didn't hit the go live button that unmutes it all. That's what happened. Good old automation, huh?
Damn that automation.
Oh, I love automation. Don't damn automation. Automation makes my life worth living. That's how I work. I get to a job and they'll come to me and be like, hey, we need you to do this. So I'll write a script to do it for me. And then the next time they come and ask me to do that, it's just click, click, done. Curious about your board game? So am I. I have no idea what it's going to be.
Should be interesting. It'll be...
We like to design games, and we like to teach about game design. And the best way to teach about game design is to do it. So whenever we do one of these challenges, we literally come in with no idea. We take ideas from you guys. We mold it around as we go. Show you some. All right. So where do you want to start? We need a theme. We need something. We need an idea to start with. A setting.
Do you want to put any constraints in, or are we just going to be able to say whatever can go?
Let's try to do this in 2 sessions. So like a 4-hour design.
Sure.
So keep that in mind. That'll be our constraint, our scope, if you will.
Yeah, I was thinking if we want to limit it to only playing cards, dice, and tokens, or if we want to open it up to just completely custom cards.
We're totally open to custom cards if we think we can do them in 4 hours. That would mean 10 or 12 designed cards. We're not going to do 400 cards in a deck or anything in 4 hours.
No.
That's not a thing that's going to happen. I did that before. It was fun. It took months, but it was fun. So, what do you want? How about a setting? A theme? Yeah. Is it an adventure action game in a fantasy place? Is it a co-op? Is it a PvP? Maybe that's the first decision. Do you want this to be cooperative or competitive? Getting some cereal to watch it. BRB. All right. Everybody hold on. Wait while he gets cereal. They get cereal. No, I'm joking. All right, so I think it's up to us here. Do we want to do something competitive or cooperative?
I don't know, because I play a lot of cooperative board games, because I find them, because, depending on who you play with, when you play competitive games, there's always, a bit of salt. There's always, the joke about Monopoly ending friendships and stuff like that. But you know, a good competitive game can also be quite fun and quite fun to make. So I'm kind of in the middle of the two. My preference for playing them, at least, is typically the co-op style. I like
We could do
together.
Like a co-op competition thing.
There's some games that are like that.
Yep. I played a zombie
count.
survival one where you're like scoring kills and stuff as you go, and you can steal from each other. Hey, GBD, got my lunch, and I'm ready to chow down. Awesome stock. We are trying to figure out. Okay, first question. Let's write some stuff down. Board game design. Go ahead and center you and make you look like an actual title. Make it kind of big. There we go. Blow this up. Zoom it in a touch. There we go. I think I like this at 175 usually. 125, 10, 100. There we go. And this. Oh. Why were you zoomed in so much? That'll do. Is that okay? Can you read that? Do you need more? Maybe a bit more? There you go. All right. Cooperation or competition? Setting. Players. Pieces. All right. We got to start filling in some actual stuff. I'm putting headings down. Just start throwing ideas out if you have an idea. Players, let's you and I just say this should be, let's go 3+ for now. That might change.
Sure.
I just find 2-player games get stale. Designing it for a minimum of 3 is more interesting.
Yeah, that's fair. Adds a bit of, you know, the triangle approach.
Yeah.
It's not just...
Cards, dice, custom cards.
If there's going to be a game board or not.
Tokens, game board. Hey, thank you very much for the host, Doc. Let's go ahead and say it will be on a board. We don't know what kind of board yet. It could be just basic pieces or something. There's most likely going to be a game board. Let's even give that its own heading, because it is a board game. So a game board goes hand in hand with a board game.
We could talk about what dimension of the board game it'll be in. If it's going to be like a one-dimensional game or a two-dimensional game.
Yep.
Yeah. For people who don't know, an example of a one-dimensional game is Monopoly. Even though it seems like you're, you know, moving in X and Y axis up and down, it's actually just a straight line that you're going into. And then an example of like a two-dimensional game is anything from like checkers, chess, to any sort of game where you just kind of freely will move around the board. You can choose if you're going to go, you know, up, down, left, or right.
Yep. Battleship's a good 2D. I like Battleship as a board game example. That's a strange game. Setting? Anybody have a setting preference? It'll help give us some direction.
Some input from chat on what they'd like to see. If they want to try to throw us a curveball and make something quite out there, or if they've had any ideas themselves that they want to see, you know, actualized. Exactly.
Don't make it too easy on us. We're trying to... Cyberpunk board game. Very on point for current. And that's cool because I love Cyberpunk, and I actually know quite a bit about Cyberpunk.
Yeah, I absolutely love Cyberpunk, and I am so stoked for the game. And I've been reading the lore book on Cyberpunk 2077. So I feel like I've been studying for this now. I am prepared.
Okay, so if we're doing a 3+ player Cyberpunk game, then I'm just going to come down here and go ahead and say it's a 2D. 1D just don't fit. It just ain't right.
Yeah.
But Cyberpunk setting. Who are the players?
What's the goal? And the kind of win and lose conditions.
These are the first things we need to figure out. So I've always wanted to make a cyberpunk game where the players are like megacorps.
That'd be cool. If it's cooperative, then you can kind of figure out if we want to keep it the cooperative. I'm sure that's been decided or not, because if it's competitive, then it could also be megacorps versus hackers or netrunners. And that's kind of that dynamic where the netrunners are trying to hack resources away from the megacorps, and the megacorps are trying to stop them and catch them.
Yeah, you could totally do it where it's a cooperative thing where all the players are like runners, like Shadowrun style. And then the main big bad goal is to take down the megacorp.
Yeah.
Hey, Chugaboom, welcome. There is no game yet. We're making it. We've been given the setting of cyberpunk. We've decided we want it for 3+ players. That's still in the air. And I went ahead and said it's probably going to be a 2D board for cyberpunk, because we want to do it right. Please join. Please provide ideas. And curveballs. The players could be megacorps. It could be runners, deckers, riggers. I'm just using the lingo I know. Johnsons. For anybody that doesn't know what a Johnson is, Shadowrun slang for somebody that hires the runners, deckers, riggers, street sams. They know them personally. So if you're like a megacorp, rich, super powerful, you may know like really, really high-end runners and deckers that you deal with directly. But when you don't want to have your name anywhere near something, you go to the Johnson, you say, I need you to get this job done. And the Johnson then goes and finds the random runners and deckers and riggers and people that the company has no idea who they are, and they have no idea who the company is. It's like a go-between. Being a cyberpunk biker gang anti-hero. It doesn't even necessarily need to be anti-hero in cyberpunk. A biker gang just going against civilization could easily be the good guys, because the biggest villains in cyberpunk setting is mega corporations. Hey, Rubido, welcome, buddy.
I think it might be cool, depending on the setting that we want to place this, if everything takes place, maybe on the net, not in actually like a physical space. Maybe you're moving around, network to network, server to server, data center to data center, and that's kind of how the actual movement and objectives work. So it's not just like a traditional set piece world that you're moving in. It can be a bit more dynamic and change things up depending on what's available.
I like this idea. It's an interesting approach. It's one piece of the cyber world, which is what we want. It's still very cyberpunk. You can have stuff, the things could happen outside of the board which affect you in the board to give it that flavor and feel without ever having to leave the cyber world within play. Like a voltage spike, power outage for your spot, drop in connection could affect players and give it that texture, that flavor, like you're actually cyberpunk, even though we're just in the digital. Sentient triangle.
The Illuminati. It could fit into the megacorps. Could be some, megacorp AI that you're trying to fight against as well.
That's what I was thinking.
Trying to stop you from what you're doing.
Yeah. And it just looks like a big triangle. Decided to draw itself as a triangular mesh because that was the most efficient way to display itself.
Yeah.
Imagining a triangle forcing people to draw it at 1,000,000 frames per second and crash. Death by triangle. So if that's the case, then the players are probably going to be deckers. AKA cyberpunk hackers. So, win?
We got to figure out what the players need to do to defeat Mr. Sentient Triangle.
And what is Mr. Sentient Triangle doing to prevent them? So it could be... Is this Sentient Triangle like attacking the city? Or maybe it was actually... It's doing its job. Eating their brains, so that would be causing like black ICE.
Yeah,
flashbacks.
It could be trying to like hack them as they're trying to hack it, and you need to, you know, like find a way to shut it down and disable it. Yeah, we could have it either on the offensive or defensive. We could have it, you know, the Deckers are trying to hack into a mega corporation because they need some data or something like that. And then this is a response, you know, this AI is there to stop them, and they either have to shut it down or the AI is going to infiltrate their machines and, you know, and their like into their cyber links to their brain and, you know, destroy them. Or it could be after a successful, you know, cyber heist. Now this AI is kind of like a automated like repo man. It gets sent out to retrieve any data that was stolen from their data center, and that it infiltrates, you know, all of their machines, and you're trying to defend against it coming in and wiping out your whole like Decker crew.
So you've done a job and stolen something, and the Triangle AI is attacking them to get the data back, and you have to defend. So it's almost like you're the defensive cooperative as you're being attacked by this thing after doing a job. So you're going to have something to protect then.
Yeah, it could either be attack or defense. You could be either trying to get the thing, or you could be defending, and this thing comes in to try to take it back.
I think the attacking is the way most people would go because it's like the most obvious in your face. So I think going, we've already gotten this stuff and we have to defend it, is an interesting one because it creates a dual loss scenario. Right? We can lose by losing the item, or we can lose by all of the players dying.
Yeah. And then it can add a bit of pressure as well. There's a lot of ways that we can kind of, you know, if you're attacking, you usually feel like you have control of what's going on. It's hard to, you know, feel like it's out of your control if you're the one organizing the attack. But if something's attacking you, then you're kind of scrambling to, you know, try to get a step ahead of it when, you know, it's like you're basically like taking steps back while it's taking steps forward, and you're trying to, you know, ground your feet.
Yeah, you're creating a reactionary scenario for the players rather than a planned, anticipated scenario. So it can be defeated with empaths. All right, that's all flavor stuff. We can work into more of that as we get into the nitty gritty flavor details. How the different abilities play out is basically not play out. Like you can play out abilities in 5-6 ways and have it be 1,000,000 different effects. It's just the flavor you attach to it, right? Like at the end of the day, it's rolling a die, flipping a card. It's what you call it that gives it was it an empath defeating a psychic virus, or a guy slashing a zombie with a sword, right?
Yeah, it's the principal mechanics versus the, you know, flavor dynamics.
Yeah.
So to win, I think it's either going to have to be, so we have to figure out, so they have, if they're defending this score that they got, and I'm going to leave it kind of open right now because for replayability, you could have, you know, different types of successful heists that got pulled, and depending on what you heisted, it's a different, you know, defense scenario. Like maybe one is, you know, cryptocurrency, a whole lot of cryptocurrency that you just stole, and you're trying to like redivide into a bunch of accounts. So like the net runners are moving around trying to, you know, store it into accounts while not losing as much of the score. Another one could be like a huge database that they just, you know, grabbed, and now they're trying to, encrypt the thing and store it somewhere where the AI can't find it. There could be a whole bunch of things that are added. So
I say we focus on one game mode for this, with the exception and understanding that we could easily add more game modes for replayability without a lot of work.
Yeah, so I was thinking of just finding some winning mechanics, and then we don't have to use them all, but there could be a few that we choose just for the default scenario that we're going to go with. So I'm trying to think of if there's multiple players and they have to work together. I'm trying to think of what roles and what things they will have to do to kind of, progress. Like, what's the progression going to be? What's the early game going to look like? What's that mid game going to look like? And what's that late game to final going to look like?
Roles and classes, yeah, that's definitely something I've thought of, and we'll get into. But before we know what kind of classes and roles we want to do, we need to know what the objective of the game will be, so that we know what the classes can do to help achieve that objective. So one possible objective is time limit. Flavor-wise, that is, you say you have to survive 15 turns against the AI as a group of people. It's attacking your cache, trying to get the data back and delete the data that you've stolen, and you're trying to hold on to it long enough to deliver it to the people who paid you for it. Now, if you can upload it to them, then you can win. You get the money. It's failed. It'll go attack them now, maybe, but you've got the data to them. Yeah, that's just an arbitrary number. It's a nice number for a length of a game is why I used it, but it was just an arbitrary number to give you an idea.
And if we roll with that, like, that number can always change too, right? There could be something the AI does that, bumps it up to 20 turns an hour. Now you get, you subtract a few turns or you add some turns, and it's not always going to be, doesn't have to be set, but it seems to be, at least timeline wise, the way that it would work is you would usually play a couple turns and you would time those turns, and then you can use that as a basis of, like, well, how long do I want this game to be? If it's going to be like a 10-minute game, then, if a round's only like 30 seconds to a minute, then we can do 15. But if we want it to be a 40-minute game, okay, well, maybe we should either, add more content to a round, or maybe bump up the number of rounds to a higher amount.
Yeah, exactly. And that's really one of the first questions you want to start asking once you get into, and we'll definitely talk about that in a little bit as we get a little bit more into it, but is how long do you want the game to take? That's really the question for how many rounds. Or how many rounds should we play is how long do we want the game to take, plus how long is a round, with variability, because some people play faster. Yeah,
and the nice thing about, like, certain games that are kind of like this, where you can have a bit of dynamics in it, is you can, like I was saying before, with the different kind of scenarios and the replayability of, like, the different things that you're defending. You can have one that, is short. Maybe there's one scenario game where it's, a 15 turn win condition that's, like, pretty fast and hectic, but you can also have another one that's, maybe 40 turns. There's a lot more involved, but then it's up to the player and the group they're playing with to decide, hey, like, what do we feel like doing? Do we have 20 minutes? Maybe we'll just do, like, the 10 to 15 minute version. Or, hey, maybe we have time to do, like, we really want to get into it and we can do the 40-minute full variant. There's quite a few games that do that, which is kind of nice. They usually do that by either having maps or having, the pre-made scenarios and with different sets of rules that, are designed to better suit the longevity of a 40-minute game versus the short, kind of fast-paced 10-minute to 15.
Yep. Beautiful example of that is Monopoly. You can greatly affect how long a Monopoly game is by including or excluding some of the rules in it. Almost everyone in the world does not play by the rules. They all have their own house rules, and it all affects the length of the game.
Yeah. Gotta love free parking.
Nobody uses the auction rules. It makes the game take so long.
Yeah, it does. And some of the mortgage stuff can take forever. It takes forever to, like, bankrupt people.
Yep. So time limit, we can have no time limit, but defeat an enemy. So a good example of that is the Catacombs game you got me, where there's no set time limit or anything, but it's not going to be too long because you've got this clash going back and forth, and as long as the players playing are completely hopeless with their aim in that game, it's not going to take too long.
Yeah, either you're going to defeat it or it's going to defeat you. So it's more of, like, an active conflict.
I do like the time limit on the hacker idea if we're selling stuff. I like the idea of trying to get it to its place in time. And with it being information, there's a lot of fun mechanics already coming to my mind as a data guy with, data copies and backups and different things to throw off the AI as abilities. Yeah.
And things like, then the roles and classes can kind of develop from that, as Flash was saying. You could have someone who takes on the role of trying their best to delay the AI and slow them down, and have someone else have the role that they're trying to find the buyers, and they're the ones who are trying to upload that data, and they're doing everything they can to increase or maximize the bandwidth so that they don't have to take as many turns. And it kind of opens up for more possibilities that way for the different play styles.
Yeah, removing turns while the virus is adding turns. Some people could delay the virus's actions, database engineers, security guys, putting up firewalls, creating copies of the data so that it has to wipe out 2 spots instead of 1. This game includes jalapeno poppers. I'm all about it.
Sure. I had an idea for the AI too. This might be
random ideas. The Pino Popper virus.
I don't want to commit to too much, but what might be nice or cool for the AI is to maybe have it something that's generated random, like it has special abilities or mechanics. So like things are like it can, for this variant, it like hacks firewalls quicker, or it'll be able to find a certain location or something faster.
I don't think that's too hard to do. We can easily implement that. Like 12 traits in a little deck, and then you flip like 3 of them off the deck at the beginning, or 4 or whatever. Yeah.
Or you do 4, but like what I was thinking of is you only expose 1.
Mm-hmm.
I guess it'd be kind of hard to do because then
players have to know about it, otherwise it can't be implemented in the rules.
Someone would have to play as the AI.
Yeah, someone would have to be the virus then, which someone could be the virus.
Yeah, it'd be kind of like the Catacombs thing where someone controls the conflict. It'd be like a 3v1, so that's possible as well.
Yep.
The other thing was just having it like at certain phases, like you flip them, like you'll like at the start you'll have 1, but there'll be 4 that are chosen, but they're face down, they're not active yet. And at certain phases of the game they get flipped over, but someone can ahead of time discover what the other ones are, so you can kind of see what the next traits that are coming up are, and then be able to adjust your strategy accordingly.
I like that idea. It adds a lot of depth to the game without adding a lot of complication to our creation and design. Like, just somebody gets to look at the first card and say, do we want to move this to the back or leave it where it is?
Yeah, and then I see, because we have the 3-player triangle thing starting up for 3 players minimum, and then I see the 3 roles developing of the player who's trying to secure the goods and get it away, the player who's trying to slow down and stop the AI, and the player who's doing research, trying to figure out what the best, like the tactician, like a net tactician, trying to figure out the best way to get the AI, and also the best way to get the goods out of there. So they're all kind of complementing and supporting each other.
Yeah, basically the Holy Trinity. Healing, or adding turns, tanking, or slowing down the virus. Or tanking is duplicating the data and just basically making you hardier, so the virus has to do more work to kill it. And CC is adding or healing is adding. No, healing is removing the turns. Anyway, it all works out. CC is slowing down the virus. Yeah, there we go. The Holy Trinity can be applied almost anywhere. No, the Holy Trinity does not involve dealing damage. Everyone deals damage.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm thinking since it's the Holy Trinity, which is a triangle, and we have a triangle AI, I feel like this triangle theme is going to keep popping up. So we should maybe apply the same thing to the triangle as well. It has like the same 3 kind of abilities that the other players do as a single entity. So it it does the same thing of it can slow down the players, it can extend its own turns, as well as it can do discovery on the player stuff, and then open itself up to better strategic things.
Virus ability deck, then some things that the virus can do that'll flip over each turn and enact and then get shuffled in.
Yeah.
Player abilities / classes. The jalapeno popper virus will be a card. that will doom everyone.
That'd be a spicy problem.
For the game board, just as a random little spot here, I'm kind of envisioning almost like a Master of Orion 2 type screen with different dots all over it, connected by different ways as like hops, not very clean, random directions sometimes.
Yeah, what I'm thinking, like, depending on how complicated this gets, there's a bunch of stuff we could do. Like, it could just be like a template board with a bunch of spots to put cards, and then you could just put a bunch of cards down there that are kind of like face down, and that's part of, you know, the navigation, as you need to figure out what's there and where you can move to, and maybe there's certain nodes that you can't move to. Like the AI will have, you know, like honeypot things set up, and if like a player moves into a honeypot node without, you know, properly discovering it, you know, and then maybe they get caught, they take, you know, damage, or maybe that's it for them. So maybe you're trying to like carve your way through it, and it's kind of like jumping through the net to find the sources of the buyers. So then like maybe the buyers are a face down card as well, and the point of what you're trying to do is, you know, find that path that's not honeypots and or other traps, and trying to find the cards that if you go to them, that's where you can offload your loot, and you need to maybe find like a certain amount of them to win.
That's interesting. Reminding me of another board game I have somewhere, and I don't even remember the name of it, but it's up to 8 versus 1 or something like that. You can do 1v1, but you can have like up to 8 people versus 1. One person is a spy, and the rest of the people work for, I believe it was Scotland Yard in the game. You're on this big map grid where you can move by taxi, which was like point to point, any node to any node, one hop. Waterways, which was huge movements, but there was only like 4 or 5 spots where you could get on the waterway. And then trains, which was in between them. They moved not quite as far as the waterways, but definitely farther than a single hop, and there was a larger number of them. When the individual player made his move, all you would know is what card he used for transport. So if he used a waterway card, you know he's at one of those 5 spots. But he just moved a long way, so he could have gotten a long way from you guys if you were all around him. He's just playing the taxi cards, he can't be getting away from you very quick, but he could be anywhere on the board.
Yeah. I'm thinking as well, because then like maybe the virus could, I don't know. If there's a player controlling the virus, it might be neat with the dynamic where the virus could be moving around the board, but you don't know where it's moving to, you just know how it's moving. And there's only like certain nodes that it could get to, right? Like there's certain secure channels that can be moved by, you know, shorter hops or longer hops, or maybe it's a direct line, or maybe there's a satellite line and there's only like certain satellite hubs that are around the place that they can go to. So yeah, but that mechanic kind of relies on
there being another player.
Yeah, that, or it can be randomized. It would just be a bit more difficult. Or it would have to be like some sort of check where like when a player moves, they would have to, you know, check or roll some sort of chance thing to see if the virus is actually at that location right now or not.
Just the image that I was getting while you were describing that was that game with the different ways to move. And so if the player is going around actually trying to find a place to sell it, so that means he's going to have like an actual base on the map, and then like a network of stuff coming at his base basically that he's got to push the virus back from. So is it going to branch out around it, all around his base, or is it going to be like a direct attack to the base? Because if you're trying to find buyers actively on the board, you're adding complication of like, you know, randomly seeding them, keeping that location secret from all the players, but still known in some way. So if if we're going the buyer route in the interest of simplicity, we should do the straight time limit where that number is fluctuating and variable. So like if an event happens, you could get a buyer quicker, surprise buyer, something like that. Or there could be a card, you know, based on the current state of the AI's assault on you. It could either bring a buyer faster if it hasn't gained much ground and you've been defending well, and if you haven't defending well, it pushes it quicker and paces the game.
So I had a thought and it just My brain just lost it. I'm gonna say what? God damn it. Oh yeah. Okay. So an idea I had as well is like depending on like maybe you're trying to find where to hop to. You're searching through the net, right? But this thing, maybe it's not like a base of operation. Maybe this thing's either tracking you or it's trying to find your like central base location, and your crew's just all hooked up there. So maybe you're trying to divert it by bouncing it around, making it hit the wrong hub, and it just winds up in random locations. And you're just trying to stop it from just getting to what your base is. And in the meantime, you're trying to discover where the buyers are. But maybe you can like make certain selections and certain guesses, but you can't see it right away. And then you kind of have to make it like a strategic choice on how sure you want to be on it. So maybe like part of the tactician or part of the research is you have to figure out what are the odds of it being a honeypot versus what are the odds of it being a legit buyer. And depending on if you're running out of time or you might have to start making those riskier decisions of like, okay, just go for it. We'll take the chance if it's a buyer or not versus fully fleshing out your odds.
I'm trying to think of how all of this, including the, avoid hacking next time, you get an extra perk, reward. It is a cooperative game. So things to keep in mind in cooperative game, just off the top of my head as we're going. If it's too easy, it's not fun. You shouldn't succeed every time at a cooperative game. Otherwise, you just sit down expecting to win every time. If you do want to make it one where you're going to win more often than not, we could go and take an old school video game idea and top scores at the end. So there could be a scoring system.
How would the scoring, like would it not be cooperative at that point if it's scoring? Because then
it's cooperative, but how good did the group do?
Okay, I mean, yeah, I guess it'd be straightforward because eventually they get caught, and then maybe instead of the AI just actually killing them, maybe the AI just takes what's remaining, and then their score is just how much of that loot they actually managed to sell or get rid of.
Yeah, or losing a player as you go, losing a base. Yeah. If you duplicated the data in case you lost the base, great. So you didn't lose the game. You didn't get any extra points for the duplication, and then you lose points because you lost one of the copies. So it's more efficient to go straight for your objective, not have to worry about that defensive side. But if you're falling behind or not playing well and you need to go to the other strategies, you're going to be losing points, you're going to be taking longer. Also a little bit of luck. Every turn the score goes down a little bit. Start with a score. We can use a score removal system. So there is a perfect score. Go down.
Yeah, I guess it's all the data kind of thing. And then maybe as things go on, if you don't put countermeasures in place, the AI can, start applying, or we'll have infiltrated some of your nodes and we'll start siphoning off some of that score or some of that loot.
It does. I don't even see it having to be the amount of data you got off. Like even just a player died, but you managed to sell it all. It's not a perfect score, and you can try to do better next time. Yeah, it gives you a reason to replay the game.
No, well, if a player gets compromised, you could have it being like, well, it took over and it knows the information and then went after the buyer, and then it's like you don't get like a perfect sell. Your reputation or whatever gets damaged.
I like a perk flaw idea on the characters. Based on what you're saying there. So instead of just being a set thing when they die, if it takes out one of the characters, it gets access to whatever that character was doing. It would be a different detriment to the team.
Yeah, and it might put in a bit of motivation for the team to keep their teammates alive.
Yeah, exactly. You suddenly have to defend people. Like if your data guy goes, you lose all but one copy of your data.
Yeah, like the like games like there's a lot of zombie survival games, like board games that I've played.
I think it's a good comparison here.
Yeah, one of the big flaws with them, and even though they're co-op, is that there's still a lot of like personal kind of goals in it, where like as long as you survive, you technically can say that you won.
Yep.
Like it doesn't really always matter. Like sure, there could be score and everything like that, but you yourself will feel like you're won. So if your other teammates in a bit of danger, there's not too much of a motivation to always save them, especially if you're getting near to the end of the rounds and you're like, well, oh well, I'm going to run over here and just make sure to survive the game. Whereas if you put in, a penalty to if a player goes away, then, they have an added incentive, even if it's a selfish incentive, like I need to keep you alive. Otherwise, it's going to make it harder for myself.
Yes.
Should we sort out what is like health and how we want to justify what is losing health and gaining health, or if there's any suggestions from chat and how they think a cyberpunk hacker would, not really die. Maybe they do die. Maybe they get shut down. Maybe they get caught. Maybe the AI can alert them, the megacorp, and they get raided by something and taken away. Or what does the chat think would be best for that?
I would like to hear that, because the traditional way in Shadowrun and other games like that is creating biofeedback, is what they call it. So like in these worlds, you're connecting to the internet by plugging into your brain, literally, just like the Matrix. That's where they got the idea too. So the Matrix, if you get interrupted, you die. In Shadowrun, they had different digital things that could actually create feedback that would kick you and like dump you out of the network, and the shock of suddenly being back in your body in a blink while you were in a digital world is enough to actually stun the person for a couple minutes, up to 10 minutes, I think.
Yeah, that's actually something we could also put in too, where like they can, maybe not always just take damage. They could also, lose turns or get stunned for turns or get disconnected from the net, and then they have to, do some action or something to be able to reconnect.
Yep. So lose, all players die. Need a question in here. How do players die? How does AI reclaim, reseal AIM data?
I have an idea. Maybe I really like that disconnect thing. Maybe because like a pet peeve, another pet peeve of mine when it comes to a lot of cooperative games is that for some of them, an early death kind of just means like the game's over. And if it's not over, then it just really sucks for the person who died, because sometimes RNG just goes bad. So maybe it's not dying. Maybe it's like disconnected. Maybe that's what the AI is trying to do if it disconnects the players or something like that, and a player can assist to reconnect another player. But that's a choice they have to make on what the appropriate time to do that is. But a player that's been knocked out can always come back in the game later. They're not 100% out, so they can still kind of have some sort of stake in the game rather than just all of a sudden being a spectator. And
I'm super feeling what you're saying, because I've totally been that guy that died early on in the game and went like, so what if players just don't die? What if they just lose? If you lose, everybody loses.
Yeah.
We could just do the disconnect where you're out for a turn or two and penalty happens based on who you are.
Yeah, we could have
every time you get dumped, the penalty hits. So you can be there, like the data guy. Say you're the data guy making data backups so that the AI has to hit more spots in order to win, so you guys have more time. But then you get dumped. You have to choose which one you want to keep, and then you can come back in like a couple turns. 1 or 2 turns. Right, the firewall guy goes down while he's setting up firewalls. You take down all the firewalls. In a turn or two when he's back up, he can start building them again. The virus is going to be advancing on you that whole time. Now, I like this idea because it lets us be mean.
I'm thinking maybe we just remove the lose condition of, I guess, so like, maybe the only lose condition is just a turn limit then. It'll at least keep things simple at first.
Yep, that's basically what I'm thinking. It's just the data reclaim, aka turn limit.
Yeah.
How do players get dumped? We're going to call it getting dumped, okay?
Yeah, and then Board was bringing up on how Prince of Persia in 2008 puts you in the last ledge when you land it rather than killing you. We can incorporate like backups as the same kind of thing. Your last backup is, where you reconnect on, or where you get, if you haven't, depending on whatever progress, whatever items you have, if you don't back them up, when you get dumped or disconnected, you lose those and you come back to whatever your last backup was.
Well, it's a virtual world, right?
Yeah.
And in the virtual world, in the internet, you are wherever you want to be. I don't have to start at Google if I want to get to Facebook. I can just start at Facebook. So let's say the players might have an area that they actually influence, aka can see or have a presence in, and when you come back in, you can just go anywhere within your area.
Yeah, I was thinking for like if we want to have items or abilities or perks on there, like you said, the firewalls, setting them up. Maybe when they get disconnected, they all got brought down, but maybe you can set up, backups so they can retrieve how many were set up at whatever point. So when they come back in, that number still comes up. And, maybe it takes a turn or something to do a backup. So let's say if you want to get risky and just, keep adding more, like you have 3 or 4 or 5 nodes that you've added for this firewall. But if you get dumped or disconnected, you're going to lose all that rather than, taking your turn and not adding one, but ensuring the security of what you have. And
I like the added strategy. I just think it needs to be longer than a turn. Like maybe 1 turn to set up the wall and 3 turns to harden it.
Yeah, of course. And then like it could be, maybe varying effects of security if you want to do that as well. Maybe it's not a 100% guarantee of your backups, right? Because, there's the option of the AI takes your backups too or something.
Well, that's where I think we get into abilities with the AI slicing through a wall here and there, or a firewall becoming compromised by a third party, or stuff like that. Throw the random events in that way. We'll have a couple different decks, I'm sure, that we'll have to come up with different pieces for, but it shouldn't be too hard. I'm sure we can come up with 15, 20 cards.
Yeah. And chat, of course, can always help as well. They can pitch all those ideas.
Oh, yeah. I'm sure they'll have lots of good ones. I love you guys, chat. Keep us thinking. So not really defeating. We're just going to go time limit for winning. Keep it simple. No time limit, but turn counter reaches 0. Let's say. We're counting down to when the data gets sold, because the turn counter can change. So it's not like a turn limit. It's just waiting for that counter to hit 0. I already want to play this game now.
Yeah, it sounds pretty sick.
So how do players get dumped? How does AI reclaim data? What pieces do we use? These are tightly tied together. Setting players. Who are the players? There we go. I don't want to influence too much. And I need water. So I'm going to go get myself some water. You guys give me a couple ideas on how do players get dumped and how does the AI reclaim the data.
Good old quality H2O. Hey Val, how's it going? So yeah, the players getting dumped or disconnected from the net. How does this happen, or how should this happen? Yeah, I don't have access to the doc, but I'll write that down. Because they can have police come in, they could have people raid maybe your house, something like that. But
we don't want flavor at this point. We've got a lot of flavor, Rubida. We need mechanics. What are we going to use? Are we going to use cards? Are we going to use dice, custom decks? How do we actually want to determine if the player's dumped? I remember in the last 2 Deus Ex games, when you failed to hack enough times, you just get completely locked out of the system. Yeah, but that was like keyboard hacking. We're thinking more cyberdeck AI plugged into the net hacking, where your whole consciousness is in there.
I'm not sure if we've decided if it's cooperative or competitive yet, so it's kind of up to the chat to vote on that or suggest which ones they would prefer.
I've been going whole cooperative this whole time, I thought. And it's a map board? That's kind of what I'm thinking, yeah. Like a hop idea like this. Not with less dead ends, right? Because we want it to be more of an actual path, but this sort of a grid type idea where it's not contiguous, it's not square, it's not, you always have 3 places to go. You can have 1 path, you can have 5 paths. There is no AI player. Well, maybe. I think it's better to just do 3 players versus a simple AI right now. It's going to be a lot less mechanics. We've got an hour left in this one, and then we've got 1 more session to have all the cards and everything decided. So I think just for scope reasons, we're going to say basic AI. Is anybody...
Well, I would say that the AI can still set up traps. It would just have to be, a card draw that gets placed on a node. That could either, be a regular node, it could be, a honeypot, it could be some sort of effect, right? It doesn't directly have to be an AI choosing it. It can be, the randomness of the card draw can determine that.
The AI has to be attacking, though, right? It's not just setting up traps around the city because it's trying to get your data. So if you're just sitting back and protecting your data, it can go ahead and set up traps around the city all at once, and you're never going to stumble onto them because you're just sitting there going, waiting for a seller.
Well, that's the thing. You have to find the seller. So maybe that's what I was thinking about a honeypot. A honeypot's, a fake, like it's to catch them, right? So they think it's a seller when really it's a honeypot and you're dumping the data into the AI. And that's how it's retrieving the data. So you have to figure out if it's, a trap or not before you start dumping the data, or you're going to start dumping the data and hope it's not, or, maybe it can take the data directly from you as well as, set up those traps where you think you're getting rid of the data, but if you're not careful enough with it, then you just kind of gave away your score.
Okay, so we've got grids, and we start with all of our hop cards, and we lay our hop cards down, and you can bounce around on the hop cards without knowing what they are, just bouncing through it the same way we would if we hit a VPN and went through it. We have no idea what that VPN is. We just went past it and through it. And you have to spend time, resource, energy, something in order to be able to flip that card. Or you can interact with it before you flip it if you're feeling ballsy, like you've searched every other card, you know that this has to be a seller, transfer the data.
Yeah, and there could be some things in there too, like if you don't know what it is, you can take certain risks of, maybe you don't upload the data, maybe you upload a virus of your own, so that if it is the Megacorp virus, it'll cause some ability. But if it's an actual seller, then maybe you cause some issues for them, and you'll a bit of a gamble on that as well.
Different ways to there'd be like different ways to test the card. Basically, you're thinking.
Kind of, or like,
is that going to be is that going to be an ability on one of the players for the little class, or is that going to be like an ability that from a deck of cards that we're going to have to build where they're going to have action cards and stuff?
I think it'd be one of the players. The way I envisioned it is basically you'll have this unknown card at this node, and you have one player trying to figure out what that card is, and they can start, getting a good idea of a guess. There's like certain tests they can do that have like maybe some certainties to it or some probability to it or something, right? And then there's another player who basically has the ability to either, upload the data or upload a virus, and it's up to them to, decide, all right, okay, we're confident that this is, an AI honey trap. We're going to upload a virus to, slow it down and stop it or stun it for a bit. Or we're confident this is the seller. We're going to upload our data to it and send it that way. But there's, depending on how much how much of the tactician has done and the research, or depending on how, risky you want to get, you can just go with either option and have a penalty for getting it wrong.
All good ideas I'm hearing. I'm mulling in my head how I actually make it a simple mechanic, though. Nanu, Mr. Lowe, welcome. Join the Join the table with the board game creation.
if we want to incorporate dice, the way we could do it then is basically it would be a dice roll, whether for when you actually do it for what it is, and for it to be more in favor of it being a seller, it would basically be like you get more dice to roll, and the threshold for if it's a honeypot versus if it's a seller is kind of scaled to that as well. So like if it's going to be like, let's say if it's for certain honeypots, it's going to be like it's going to be 3. If it's a value lower than 3, then it turns out to be a virus, or the virus gets some of it. And if you only roll with a single die, then you basically only have like it's like a 50% chance of doing it. Versus, let's say if it's you get 2 dice, then that odds go way down, or you can balance it out where maybe it's 12, but you have 2 dice or 3 dice and stuff like that.
So and then that would do away with the individual cards, and it doesn't matter what it is. It's really the roll of the dice that's going to determine what it is.
Yeah, well, the card could be the actual. It could explain what the values are, right? So maybe there's a card, like certain cards only have honeypot threshold of 3, and other cards have a honeypot threshold of 12. Maybe some have 20, and one player is trying to figure out what that threshold is, and if they figure out, they can flip that card over, kind of thing, and then you'll know for sure what it is, and then you can decide whether you want to just risk it with 2 dice or be confident and go for the 3 dice roll.
Sorry, I'm thinking of ways to do this, like how. So the card is face down, and it's got values on it. Maybe a virus value, a seller value, and a nothing value.
Yeah.
And I guess they'd be like targets. So if it's below that value and above all the other values, that's the one you get.
Yeah.
Okay. And then they have to risk, gamble, whatever, if they just want to flip it and interact, or try to flip it and not interact.
Yeah, they could flip it and then either just not interact with it, maybe get a different card to work with, or do something to increase their odds.
Okay, so you're talking about playing with I was thinking either they flip it, and if they flip it, they have to interact, or they wait, and if they flip it in a safer way where it's going to take more time, or it's going to require a special way to flip it, or something like that, but it doesn't automatically do it, so you're gathering information rather than just acting.
Yeah, I would say that the flip would just be like the exposing the information. But then, if it's, depending on what information is exposed, you still have to decide how many dice you're going to want to roll with. If it's going to be a single die, if you can risk it, if it's going to be 2 dice, or maybe it's, such a high honeypot level that it's not even worth the risk and you want to just find a different card.
Yeah, and then that would take into play how many turns you've got left. So I'm thinking again on the whole, flip, harden, or create wall or harden idea in a spot to prevent virus. Same sort of relationship where you can go there and just flip it in 1 turn, and that acts on it. And that's how you found out, is just by going there and seeing what's there, basically. Or you can recon, for lack of a better term, and instead of flipping it right there, stay there for 2-3 turns, where then it turns and you don't actually have to act on it.
Yeah, that works.
That creates the risk reward that we want, and then it creates incentive to not do that necessarily. Then you can have a lot of bonuses in the action, the random action deck, which I think we're going to need to make the game really interesting, where basically every turn we just flip one. Maybe a virus deck and a player deck. Each of them flip one and do something.
Yeah. Or another way for that is to have the virus deck flip and maybe like the players will get a card on their turn, and then maybe when the virus deck flips, there's, it requires a certain amount of certain action cards from the players to negate whatever effect it's trying to do. And then the players can, expel their abilities that way, and then there could be a player who works on trying to, draw more cards per turn, so they have, more resources to deal with the active virus ability on each turn.
I don't want to have enough cards where the player has a hand, but I don't mind the idea of one of the players getting to flip a second card from their ability, or a third one from their player deck that all the players share, and choose which one of the three. Once you had control of a node on a grid, you could choose to do a fortify action that would basically put up a defensive wall that made the AI defense take longer to break through the node, and it'd take longer depending on what level your fortify was at. That was actually exactly what I was going to bring up, Val. Exact same mechanic. That's from Human Revolution, at least I've seen. I don't know about the other ones. I didn't play them, I only watched them, but that was what I was imagining. Was I wanted to bring up that in those, the virus starts at a set location and branches outwards and expands towards its objective. So it would be constantly moving towards the player, maybe have a base behavior that it does every turn, and then a modified behavior that can happen as well based on a deck flip. At which point we could have, so these aren't hop cards, these are maybe, we can call them hop cards, but they're not going to represent every hop. A lot of hops should be dead space, neither a buyer or a honeypot or anything like that. So the cards would be in a few places, and you would go to the cards and then have to decide how you want to reveal them. You want to spend the time revealing them, take those 4 turns, let the virus make that kind of progress towards you if you have the time to do that. Or do you want to flip it and risk it? And you won't lose your data if it's not a buyer. You're not going to blindly upload it, but you are going to act on it right away, and it might honeypot you and stick you there for a couple turns while the virus approaches you. So be on same square as virus. Possibly. If you're stuck there and you can't escape before the virus comes there, it finds you and it knows where you are, so it dumps you and you suffer dump shock, and then your dump effect gets happened and you get a turn or 2 off before you can come back in and start doing your stuff.
Yeah, that makes sense. And then, I guess then the fortify mechanic of just the nodes you've been and the virus traveling through them, you can, fortify to prevent them from moving as fast as you are.
Yeah, the firewall guy can get there and put up a firewall, and then it'll take a turn or 2 to get through the wall. So now you're fighting back a flood of virus, basically. And it's like sticking your finger in a dam constantly. There's no way to ever stop it. It's going to be moving more than you most turns. But you can choose choke points, slow down areas, stuff like that. I'm not saying we should do this necessarily, but I think it will be easier if the buyer is just a turn limit that you need to survive for. Yeah, like you've already arranged it. You've gotten the data for him, and you're just waiting for the buyer to show up and take the data, and you have to protect it until the buyer gets there.
And then how does the AI take the data?
Possesses the square that the data is on.
So then the players are moving the data around with them?
You could put your data in a spot at the beginning. Like it starts in your base. Type idea. Here's your mainframe. This is where you've got the data. Now the AI started attacking you, and while you're waiting for the buyer, you've got to try to protect this data for that amount of time. If you want to create an off-site backup, that's where that data guy comes in. And then if they get your main base, you've still got the offsite. If they get the offsite, you've still got your main base.
Yeah, that makes sense.
I think it'll be less work is all.
Yeah.
And that keeps our, that's the original win of turn counter reaches 0. You've survived long enough, you win. So on the 3, let's 3 of them. It's almost sounding like it's not even 3+, it's just 3 right now.
Yeah, I was just thinking about that too, but it's going to be plus. I mean, it could always be more than 3. You could have the flavors of the different classes, so maybe it's the same, part of the Trinity, but, with a different kind of specialization in it, right? Kind of like, how the healer doesn't always necessarily have to be healing. It could also, be more buff-based. So instead of directly increasing the health, it's, increasing the stats of everyone else.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Hey, Frenum, thank you very much for the raid. Welcome, Frenum Raiders. I haven't gotten to catch Frenum very often lately. I hope your streams have been going well. I saw you were on today. I was lurking as long as I can, but I had to design a board game, which is what we're doing right now. It has become a cyberpunk board game for 3, maybe more players, where you all play Deckers, which is a cyberpunk hacker, who are trying to defeat a sentient triangle, which is a triangle AI who you have stolen data from its master, and it's trying to get the data back from you. You win by holding on to the data long enough to give it to your buyer. The turn counter reaches 0, the buyer shows up, you guys win. If the AI gets the data back, you lose. Not miss one stream. This was the first stream in maybe 2 or 3 weeks, but I had fun. Awesome. That's what streaming's all about, right? It's all about having fun. I'm glad you had a good time. So players can get dumped. System shock. Oh, I'm in my body again. What the hell happened? I gotta get back online and help out. You lose a turn or 2. Happens if the virus catches you. How does the AI reclaim data? It gets to the data square. If it touches your data, it gets your data back. You lose. Can't let it reach the data. We're just trying to figure out how to implement all that now. Unless you're a getting over it streamer, then it's about misery and self-loathing. I think they enjoy the misery and self-loathing. They have problems. So it's a 2D board. Pops, not clean, random, erratic, all over the place. Different places you can go between. Just no. So we've got data at your base. Maybe a few points off. Right? It's not universal. You can't go every point to every point. That's where your connections lie. This is very basic. It would be bigger. So you've got your virus. Your players are bouncing around in here. Right? Virus is here. It might spread there and there. You've got piece, piece, piece. It'd probably be like, I'm envisioning like a little red cardboard cutout, just pop, 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 and it's the spread coming down and tendrils sort of looking for you as it grabs nodes and watches for you there. So like your first job as the firewall guy is to defend here, here, and here. And then you've got so many points that you're coming at, you've got to look at where the virus is spreading, how it's going. I like the idea of random virus movement. So we could do like a die. I like the die for that idea.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm trying to think of how it would decide where to move based on the possible moves that it has.
Ideally, let's try to use D6, because everyone has a D6.
Yeah, I'm thinking like the actual mechanic of when you roll the dice. Like, what does that number mean? Like, how does it move? You know, which node does it go down, and how much does it go?
Yeah, I got that. I'm just saying let's try to stick to the common die, not include the 4s and the 8s and the 12s and the 20s.
You want a D100?
That's two 10s. Actually, I've used a real D100 before. Die.
They are cool looking. There are some cool looking dies out there, depending how many faces you want. Definitely not practical when you can just do 2.
Yeah, two 10s is much better than having an actual D100. I've seen D100s done in a few different ways. My favorite was it was a big, it had like a point on each side and then a round middle. And then the 50 faces here and 50 faces here, and you put it down and just spun it. And eventually it would land on one of the 2 and then start going in a circle until it stops on one of the 50 faces on that half.
Some cool stuff. I miss having fancy dice everywhere. I need to find where my dice went.
My dice are in my magic bag. Yes, how does the virus move?
Does chat have any suggestions? How do you guys think it should move? If it's at one point, you're going to roll a dice, and depending on that dice roll, it's going to move somewhere else from its current node. So yeah, maybe add a few more nodes just out and about, and maybe just color one of them red to kind of signify like where the virus currently is.
Yeah, that's a big node. We're going to make a nice little tiny node here, just to make it not seem like it fits at all. We're going to do a medium-sized node here, and then we're going to do a strange line. There we go. Now it looks like it was done by hand. Virus. How do we choose left or right? Everyone's brain just goes, what?
And then it gets complicated too when you get to the nodes that have, 4 connections on them. How do you choose?
Yep.
Out of the 4, I think
That's why this is fun, right? It gets us thinking. How do we want to implement this with a D6 at most?
Well, if it's just 2, maybe it's conditional. It'd get a bit complicated, which is I'm a bit worried of, because like simplistic is always nice. But
yeah,
it could be certain rules for the condition of how many places it can move. So if it's just 2, then it's just even odd. 1 to 3 is left.
Yep.
Or 1 3 5 is left, or even just 1 to 3. And
low high.
High or whatever. And then if there's 3, maybe it's just the same thing of 1 2 3 4, and then 5 6 determines where it goes. But the actual selecting of those nodes then gets kind of
arbitrary, hard to remember. And what about 4 and 5?
Yeah. Well, then if it gets up to that high, then it's just whatever dice roll it gets, and then
retry if you roll too high.
Yeah, that or something special happens. Maybe it just doesn't move or moves back
or gets multiple.
Yeah. But yeah, I think it gets a bit complicated. I'm not.
Yeah, I think that's too complicated as well. But I think it's worth talking about these different ways because it's going to get the brain juices flowing for everybody.
Yeah. Well, maybe if it's planned out, like I said, like the nodes could have types, and then maybe there's something you can do to figure out what type it's going to target, and then it can only go to those types that it's targeting, and then you just roll the dice, and if the available types there when it gets its dice roll, then it just goes there.
Yeah, I think it's going to make it too easy for the player then. Because you'll be looking at it and you'll just know like most of the pattern and process of where it's going to move.
Yeah, well, I figured it wouldn't always be linear too. Like it could jump, or it could maybe like it could back trace faster than it can go forward, or something like that. So it can be a bit dynamic. But yeah, if it's linear, it's always going to be a bit easy for the player to kind of predict because there's only going to be so many paths it can take, unless it has the ability to go backwards. But then there's the problem of if RNG is on your side, then the AI is just running around in a circle while you just win the game.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, we want it to be poignant. We want it to move with a purpose and actually try to defeat the player still.
So what could happen then there is maybe by default it knows the shortest path, and the players add weight to that to kind of interfere or interrupt with it. So by default, it's just going to, whatever the shortest path is, doesn't exactly matter if it's equal left or right. It doesn't really matter too much. But what you're trying to do is try to get it to go the wrong way or go backwards, or maybe try to influence it to go to the right instead of going to the left. So maybe the data isn't or maybe it's like a straight line like it is right now. So if you were to connect that top node to that other node, by default it's a straight line and it's just trying to go straight. And what you do is basically by what you do is you determine whether it's going left or right or back.
So we're basically implementing OSPF now. OSPF is open shortest path first. It's a routing algorithm for how routers decide where they send data.
Yeah. Which would make sense for an AI trying to get data.
I do like this idea. I think it should be moving as poignantly direct as possible, which does eliminate many choices. We can still have it randomly filter down Plinko style, but we're now down to like 1 or 2 options on pretty much every grid.
Yeah, and then I think the main thing is not so much where is it going, if it's always going to be shortest distance, but being able to stop it from moving, period, or maybe getting it to go back.
Yeah, well, what I'm seeing is what we have to prevent it from going forward. So we want to block the nodes that it wants to go to, which means we need to have not just a firewall to slow it down, but also a permanent wall. But we can't have permanent walls all around the base because that makes the game unwinnable for the AI.
Yeah, well, I think just a firewall to slow it down, or you can take a node offline for a certain amount of turns, and then it just can't navigate that one node
to force it to go the other way.
Yeah, and then it has to move, so it can't just wait. So then it'll have to go around.
So here we have, let's say 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Left is low, right is high. We'll just go with that. And it goes left. Left is low, right is high. Or this is the more direct path.
Well, right now it's still, I think, equal. That's what I was thinking. I think it needs to have like the straight shot, and then the left to right would add the one, because right now left to right it's just a binary tree, so it's always going to be 2. So unless when it goes one more layer down, then it has, or even when it goes one more layer down, then it has a choice of going farther or longer. But
so this is the most logical hop for it now.
Yeah, so it target hop would be that, and then.
But how do we? It's it's easy for a player to just not realize that.
I guess that'd be part of the strategy, is it's because we can't have a player controlling the like, since the AI it's cooperative, it's got to have a set rule. Like, it's got to have to try to do the same thing every turn, which is going to be, it's always going to try to take the shortest path, and then we need, like, the players need to influence it to taking, the wrong path.
It might not necessarily move every turn. It could do something to the players on the turn too. Like, we do have the idea of a virus action deck, so maybe some of them are move 1, some of them are move 2, some of them are move right, some of them are move left. It could define that way. But again, depending on the card, I don't think the move right, move left is going to work right, because if you're like here, you pull a move left.
Yeah, I don't think move left or it would have to be something that the player chooses to do, and then it's a fail succeed. So the AI has an option that it's trying to do. The player tries to influence that option. If they succeed, they basically choose where the AI will move for that turn. If it fails, the AI is just going to go where it's going to go. But it doesn't always have to move every turn. I don't think the AI should be moving that fast, because we would have to have quite a big game board.
Yeah, I agree.
That.
This is all just for theory's sake, right? For now.
Yeah.
So yeah, maybe if the player who flipped the virus action flips a move 1, you have to move it closer to your base. So you're not allowed to move sideways. You're not allowed to move back. You have to move it here, here, or here.
I'm just wondering how it would be enforced to always actually have it be the shortest path, like you said, Well,
that's why I'm saying not shortest path, because it's too much reliant on the player being just knowledgeable in navigation and stuff like that. And more just say, you get to move it forward, so you can't move sideways, you can't move backwards. You can move to any of those 3, player choice.
Well, if it's the player choice, then for that scenario, then there's the left and right.
Should move here optimally.
Yeah, I'm just a bit.
Actually, not even. Either of these spots are the same amount of hops. They're there.
Yeah, it's kind of just either just not center. It's just weird that it would be that they'd have the choice to make it go center.
Yeah, normally I'm sure people would push it to the edge. Which is why I kind of want a more random approach rather than player choice. But we still need it to be a finite decision without too much complication.
Yeah. That or the virus can, just take over nodes and just start spreading, if we want to do it that way. So that way it doesn't really matter too much where the virus is going. It's just always kind of trying to go down.
Yeah, that's how I imagine it. That's why there's 3 red dots. I'm not removing the dots for a reason. It's got control of those spots and is spreading towards your data.
Yeah. And then that way it'll just reach your data eventually, and maybe it doesn't need to be as sentient, and then it kind of will just be a bit more up to chance onto how fast it can get there or not.
Well, it probably also doesn't know where your data is. Right? So it probably just is exploring. So we don't really have to think of it as moving straight towards the data. We can play it more that it doesn't know where the data is, so it wouldn't move straight towards the data.
Yeah, I think it's just the game boards. It's just hard to visualize since the data is just at the bottom and the virus started at the opposite. So it didn't seem like it would it would have to be a much larger board with a lot more nodes for it to be able to search without finding it fairly fast.
Mm-hmm. This is just to help us visualize it moving node to node, right?
Yeah.
But then we have that problem again of how do we decide? How disparate and how different do we want these connections to be between points? I guess the more we organize and order and streamline the board, the easier it will be to determine direction.
Yeah. The other option is that by default, maybe it just infects each node and it's up to the players to stop nodes.
Well, that's how I always imagined it. That is what it's
Okay,
going to
well
do. It's going to infect nodes, but how do we choose which node?
As I said, all of them. It infects all of them.
Oh, it's going to be... So from here, it takes
By-
both of these.
Yeah. So by default, it would take every single node.
And then
it's
these on the next phase, and then next round would be this, this, this,
Yeah.
this.
Unless the players
this.
start putting in the firewalls to slow down certain connections.
That makes sense. That is how it would spread. That is what it would do. It wouldn't check one place at a time.
No, it would just branch out, and then it's up to the players to, try to plot how they want to slow it down and stop it.
And then now we've taken all guesswork out of it. I like it.
And then the only thing that's up to there is basically being able to succeed on fortifying nodes and making them last longer, and having your layers of kind of defense, or where you can set up maybe there are certain nodes that aren't connected, or they're kind of dead ends, so then you don't really care too much if the AI branches down that path.
Yep, but the firewall guy is going to be important to get to work right away. The CC guy is going to be important to slow down the virus's progression into certain areas right away. Like maybe the firewall is not set up, but you block out this node. And just because they don't spread to this node, that means this one doesn't get taken.
Yeah.
And that changes your whole board strategy, because now you've got a place where you can actually defend and push to create a data backup somewhere else. I like it. I like it a lot. Does anybody disagree? Anybody have any problem with that decision? Do people really like that idea? The virus just spreads to every node it can touch every time it spreads. Whenever the card for virus action flips and says spread, it hits every node it's connected to, looking for you. There's some risk reward there, because if you're ever close to the virus doing something, you're risking that card pop up in order to get done what you want to get done and push forward your objective. Oh, that's not cards, that's custom cards. We do want custom cards, tokens, 3 characters, data tokens, firewall tokens. Leave it there for now.
Yeah, and then the firewall tokens. I'm wondering. I guess they'd go because there's connections too. So I'm wondering if we want to be able to. Is it locking down the node, or is it locking down the path? The link between them.
I think it locks the node. You install the firewall on the system and prevent all access to that system, which stops stuff coming in and going out for the virus.
Yeah, I was just wondering if we wanted to have the ability to do for both. If there's like a load knockdown, or maybe there's like the start of it is you can choose one node to shut down or one path to shut down, and then when it finishes, it locks the whole node down for all paths. But I don't know. That might be overcomplicating it. Like that's something I'd
yeah, but we could definitely look at that with custom cards for the player cards and stuff too. It could be like cut the hard line, where you get to disconnect a line between two places.
Because it might be an interesting dynamic to like build the map out that way.
Yep.
Or maybe the default game grid is just all these connected nodes, and then at the start of the game it gets placed down a bunch of nodes that are disconnected just for whatever reason. That's just how it is. And then as well as throughout the game you can start shutting down more connections, so they can still get to the node, but maybe you don't have to shut down the entire node. You just shut down the certain paths that it has to take.
I like that. Yeah, definitely something we can look at when we start getting to the initial setup of the game, having more paths than needed and locking out a bunch of them for different difficulties.
Yeah.
Also replayability for random paths and stuff like that. No cards. We won't be using regular cards. No, what have I done?
Are you hacking?
I was.
I saw the code.
I I accidentally hit F12, brought up HTML, and deleted piece of the HTML to de-render the whole page.
Oof.
I just hit refresh and re-brought it up.
The funny thing is that probably happens quite a bit to people who don't know what that dev tool is. And
Yeah, what they're doing.
Everything just died, and all of a sudden they're just looking at code. And they probably start freaking out a little bit, being like, "Oh my god!"
Yeah, so I delete it's body tag. That's like, so I like deleted top body tag.
Just literally everything.
Oops. Yeah, I see this actually working. Every step of it is making sense in my head right now. I can almost play the game.
Yeah, I could definitely throw it in a prototype.
Oh.
We just need to sort out the actual virus actions, and I think that's all you need originally in some of the player abilities.
Pitched a nut.
Ow.
Oh, okay. Oh man, that hurt. All right. So we've kind of got a board. If any of the artists want to throw together their idea of a board for next session, we can totally work with that. That'd be cool. We know how to move. We know how the virus moves. The players. All right. You know, we're smashing this. Player rules is already what we're up to. Now we're like making the details of the game. How is the player going to move? How do the player actions work? So, not player rules, but player turn. How does a player turn roll out? It's your turn, players. What do you do?
Do all players go at once? Do individual players go? I think it'd be all players go at once. I guess it'd be player's turn and then virus turn.
That's how I was envisioning it, rather than you go, virus goes. They both have their ups and downs, though, right? You go, virus goes creates a lot more. Okay, you're going to have to do this on your turn so that I can do this on my turn. And you can't really do this yet because I haven't done this yet, and it's going to delay it. So I have to do this now before you go to do that in a couple turns because it's going to take this many turns, and you are going to go before me. And whereas if you get the open, it's the player's turn, you all get to take an action. When do you want to take your actions? You choose. Then you get more of the interactive teamwork of, okay, I'm going to do this while you do that. Let me do this first so that you can do that now.
I think the simultaneous is just suits co-op games better as well, because you don't have one guy who, let's say, takes a long time to decide what they want to do, and then now your game gets paused. Whereas, you know, if they want to take a while, they can, but you still got to do what you're doing and stuff like that.
We're looking at you, Blue Magic players. Hurry up and take your damn turn.
They choose when it starts and when it ends. They choose when you get to have your turn.
Okay, it's my turn, so I'm just gonna do this and 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 this, and all that combos and untaps everything, so I can do this and this and this and this. And 20 minutes later, you're like, "Can I take my turn yet?" Yeah, okay, fine, you can go. No, okay, I can. No, you don't. Fine, go.
And counterspell.
Okay.
So I guess we're gonna have to break down. If it's simultaneous, then we have to break down what the turn will look like for each of the roles.
Yeah, well, this is a basic structure, and your basic structure should fit every character in your game, right? So it could be activate ability, and then the abilities are different, but everyone gets to activate it, or draw a card. Be different for the cards, but everyone does the same draw. You know, like Magic. Every turn is different in Magic, but it all falls under the same rule set structure. Every turn can be broken down the same way. Simultaneous turns. I like the idea of, if anybody disagrees, say so now. Nobody disagrees. Okay, it's done. It's the way it is. How does the turn actually play out?
Yeah, that's what I was thinking more of. It'll be slightly more, I think, specific per the role rather than draw card, do ability. if we want to have everyone draw a card, we can. But I think that's going to have a lot of cards in there. I think it depends on how we want their actions to be, and how if they have just the one action or multiple actions, or what is things going to go. Board disagree. What are you disagreeing on?
Just for the fun of it. He disagrees with the simultaneous turns, I think is what he was saying. Just to disagree with us. You actually want us to make them individual turns? Actually, when we can throw away the simultaneous turns idea and start working with individual turns. We'll make it work. Don't matter. Okay, simultaneous turns it is. Because it is the better way to do it.
Yeah, it makes it easier since it's the win condition's turn-based, so it is a group turn.
Yeah. Although you could just decrement the turn counter every time Virus takes the turn. That solves that problem.
Yeah, but it's just an interesting, or it gets interesting then, to envision what is a turn when the players are all acting at different intervals.
Yeah, doing different things, and then also, I was going first. No, I was going. Wasn't it me first? You take a little break. You have no idea whose turn was left on.
Yeah.
And trust me, with this kind of a game, there's many little breaks to step outside and maybe consume something.
So I guess every role will have an action. Maybe we should flesh out exactly what those are.
I think we can have multiple actions available to them even. Yeah. But let's just say they can perform an action for now. We'll figure out what actions are later. But we know that there is actions we want people to perform.
The other thing is, can you do an action and move, or is it going to be like you can either do an action or you can do a move?
I'm thinking you can do one of everything we're about to list. Let's just do it that way for now. Give the character as much ability to do things, as much ability to play the game as we can. And if we go to play test it, and it plays bad, then we can pull back.
Yep. Yeah, sounds good. More choices is usually better. The more, dynamic things they have to do, the more actual, playing they will be doing, rather than just, rule reading.
Yeah, exactly. Like we always say when we're playing digital video games, we like playing our games. That's why we play Doom and not visual novel.
You want to watch an hour-long cutscene?
Well, I don't play Kojima games, so no.
You need to make a choice to which end cutscene you get.
Well, you actually get to make a choice?
And some of them.
Some of them.
A lot of the games. Previously, there was multiple endings for some of the games that they've made before, and I do play a few of them, and it is fun to get all the endings. But I do understand that they're not for everybody.
I've tried to play a couple visual novels before. They may have been shitty ones, but literally, it's I have had no impact on this at all. Yeah. So perform action, move character. Is there anything else a player should do on their turn? We could have them flip a card every turn and just put it, not keep it in their hand, but just flip it and that action happens on the card. And if you don't want a lot of stuff, because I do like the idea of random events happening for the characters too, or potential positives, but I don't want it to be a high chance for potential positive. I don't want to bring dice rolls and interpretation into it. So what we could do is just create a decent sized deck and have most of them say nothing.
Yeah, I'm just thinking, because then it kind of just boils down to the shuffle.
Yeah, there's definitely some chance to it, but it's going to be a lot of how you're dealing with the virus, how you're preparing yourself. These are just every once in a while you might get a little bonus.
Yeah. My only thing it would have to be pretty minute, depending on the chance of because of shuffling, because shuffling is very hard to have a consistent level of RNG to it. And if it was something strong, and then there's technically a case where the top 10 cards out of it would happen, even if it is rare. I mean, it could happen. And then all of a sudden the game, it just becomes either way too easy or, the opposite, where you just never get a helpful card. And if they're super important, then you basically just get, wrecked because of that. But I think, I don't know, like, you can always balance things, like the same thing with like how Magic does it, where, you're top decking, but maybe there's also an ability to search or something, right? Maybe there's something that happens that will allow you to go in and search for a card that you need or something like that.
I think I actually like the idea that there's a deck of cards for the player. They're all good things. There's nothing bad. There's nothing neutral. You don't turn it every turn. And some of the virus actions will cause a positive action as well. So like you turn the virus action on its turn, and if it's a really bad one, they might also get a random boon.
Yeah, maybe, yeah, because like it doesn't have to be phrased as so much a virus action. It could just be like the net action or something, right? It's something that's, something is happening on the net, and this is what happened. It's either a virus thing happened or something happened in favor of the deckers. But most of the time, it'll probably be virus, or maybe sometimes it's a bit of both. At the end,
I do like the term net action, but the net action could be the neutral or positive for the player. We could include a little more neutral in that, and then every time when certain actions that the virus takes cause net actions. Like if it spreads, if it moves, that should trigger a net action. Like a net's response to this thing spreading and looking and finding. Other people are going to notice it coming into their nodes, taking over things. Other people might try to fight back against it at these times.
Yeah, like there could be, because these are technically systems that it's connecting to, so they could already have their own firewalls in place, or maybe release its own kind of counter AI to slow it down, which is just something that just happens by chance and will benefit the players. Yeah, I think that makes sense.
It spreads, and then all of a sudden, random hacker conclave add a firewall to your choice of node that was infected or taken over this round by the virus. And before it can go past that node, it's got to get past that firewall that it's encountered there.
Yeah.
So then your turn becomes super simple. You can perform an action and move your character. Order doesn't matter.
Yeah. Now okay, never mind. I was going to say there's a possibility of having the move be an action, so then you have the choice of double action, or double move, or one of each. But I guess it probably is just better is to have one action, one move, and it's optional to move.
Yeah. Should it be optional to action as well?
I'd assume so.
Okay. So your entire turn is optional. You may move, you may perform an action in any order. You don't have to do anything.
Yeah, I think that sets up maybe for some things where, if setting up a certain firewall takes 2 or 3 turns, you basically just sit there, but you have the ability to abandon it and run if the virus is getting too close.
Yep.
And you don't have to commit to it. But then if you move early, it just cancels out that final action from resolving. But, you get to basically choose in your turn what you're doing. Like, I'm continuing my last action, or I'm gonna get the hell out of here.
Yep. I like this. If you're doing something that takes multiple turns, you can't move or perform an action. That's just, you've committed to this. If you do end up moving away, it's the equivalent of, you dropping it and running. If you perform another action, you can continue it, but it doesn't get a turn's progress. Or like you stop to do something else. So if you leave the square, you lose all progress, and every time you do nothing on the square, you increase its progress by 1. Would be the finite ruling. Are you taking notes as well there? Is that what you're doing?
I bet, yeah. I'm messaging my team. I technically have homework to do tonight.
I see.
It's already done. It's a group project. It was to create a tabletop game using only dice, a deck of cards and tokens.
Right on. That'd be fun.
It was fun. It was pretty cool.
Pretty similar to what we're doing right now, actually.
Yeah, it kind of worked out. I'm like, hey, I've got experience for this. Practicing. It's trying to figure out the name, which is for me always the hardest part. I most of the time can't name stuff. It's just like it's always too literal, and it's like, all right. So I was just typing like, all right, we all suggested names, then we all voted, and now we're just gonna basically flip a coin on the because of course it always ends up at a tie. It can never just be that simple. So now I'm like, all right, let's flip a coin and go with it that way. Let the universe decide.
There you go.
Oh yeah, we also need a name.
Yep, this game needs to get a name next week.
I'm sure Rage is going to be super stoked what's available here and what we have to work with.
Yeah, I am too. So, okay, we're basically at end. Like we've gone longer than we should already because I should be giving away a couple games. But final thought before we go, I like the 3-player idea. I think the 3 roles should all be taken every time, but then there might be a couple options within each role. So the person who's CC has a couple choices to take from.
Yeah, like specialties.
Yeah.
Like disc versus holy for World of Warcraft example of a priest.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. Yeah, that kind of idea. A little bit more choice that creates so much more randomization to the strategy, so much more depth to the game when you give the player a choice between 2. Okay. So, while I quickly type up a little bit of who's going to get free games here, I want to know from chat what you think of the game so far. What do you think of the process? What do you think of the stream? And the game itself, what do you think of the game? Because this is the first time we've done this in particular.
Yeah, it's first time making a physical board game. It'd be cool to see, and if it gets fleshed out, then we can always, script it into Tabletop Simulator or something, and get people in the Discord to play it.
It looks good so far. I was actually thinking that I'd love to, if we can script it into Tabletop Simulator, play it on stream. 3 of us do like a play test of it.
Yeah, for sure, especially since there are 3 of us.
Yeah, since it just kind of works out that way.
Right.
Just, it looks good. I mean, that's great, but Pookie's here now. You didn't get to see it all, but liking where it's coming. Sorry, I only caught the end. No problem. Any questions?
We can get people suggesting names as well. We can start a big old poll.
Lots? Well, go ahead and ask Pseudo a couple while I type all this stuff out.
My internet froze for a second, and that was kind of scary.
Huh? Oh, your internet?
Yeah, everything just froze up. I'm like, uh-oh. I wasn't sure if it's just Twitch or if it's just my net.
Yeah, you can never be sure. Too many. Like I said, I missed earlier. Okay, no problem.
We will be recapping next week as well. I'm sure at the start we'll go over everything we come up with before we start adding the new stuff to it.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Nice to meet you.
Oh, thank you very much for the follow. Hope you're enjoying as well. I guess if you're following, you must be. What's up, Chief? It's going well. How's it going, Awful McBad? Just got here. Awesome. We're just
in time for the giveaway.
Just in time. Yeah, we're just about to give away some games to our contributors and members. We have been designing this game through everyone's input in chat so far. Loving what it came up with. Had no idea what it was going to be. Ended up being a game I want to play. Love when that happens. Absolutely, you can. That is why we do this. Why don't you give a quick little summary at the end, Suda, while I do this? Go over it once for both of them.
Sure. So what we've come up with is going to be a cyberpunk-themed board game for 3 players. The players will be playing deckers, which are kind of like, cyberpunk hackers. They're trying to get through the net. They've basically stolen something from this mega corporation, and then now that mega corporation has unleashed this kind of sentient AI that's represented by this triangle. It draws itself in the lowest vertices it needs, which is just 3. So it's this kind of triangle thing chasing you. The triangle is trying to basically shut you down and take back the data that you stole, and you're trying to basically just prevent it and survive for a certain amount of turns before your buyer shows up, and you can transfer the data off to them, and then get your payout. And yeah, everything is in cyberspace. You're basically jumping between network nodes. It'll be like a graph-based system of nodes, and the virus at every turn is basically trying to infect every node that it can touch. And depending on your role, there's going to be 3 different roles for the players. One of them will be trying to install and set up firewalls that'll block and slow down the virus. Someone else is trying to find ways to speed up the upload of the data to the buyer, or trying to reduce the amount of turns you have. And then someone else is trying to directly affect what the virus will be doing, and kind of influence things that way.
When the virus takes its turn, which we didn't write down, I'm trying to do something else, but we should, virus turn, flip, virus, action card. So there'll be a deck of maybe like 12 different actions that the virus can take, and you flip one, and then there might be move, where it infects all the nearest nodes, or come up with other ideas from there. We don't have any others thought up yet. That'll be one of the brainstorming sessions we do next week.
It's definitely an option.
That's totally a way it could be done, yeah. If we're going to do the die roll, I would say 2 dice, because that creates a more interesting variance in odds. The number 7 is far more common than the number 12, so 2 and 12 can be super bad, and the other ones can be more mediocre. If it's getting a little too complicated at that time for a board game, though, because this is a board game, not a digital game, right? So then you have so much math going on every single turn that it slows down the pace of the game. We want to keep it as simple as possible. Okay. Figure 3 today. So another snow.
Accidentally misclicked and disconnected.
Sentio makes it pretty simple. Just divide it by the number of nodes and put the number on the board directly. I see what you're saying. So you're saying have all of the information written onto each node for if it's on here and rolls this, it goes this way. So what about in the event where it just ends up moving backwards away from you and makes the game easy? Or we program only the forward nodes, or write in the math only on the forward nodes, or only on the direct node. Oh, you see what I mean? If it spreads to everyone that it's connected to, we ended up coming up with this. We worked on this one for quite a while, so I want to go into this a little bit, because there was big reasons we ended up going in that direction. It's super simple implementation without any thought, right? It's a realistic spread for a virus and also a system. Like it's not going to go in the real world. It wouldn't be single node by single node by single node. It would spread to every system it can connect to while it's looking for something. And it creates a lot of strategy still without having to think at all. Like no thought, no die roll, no nothing, just flip card, virus spreads, and it happens. And the virus isn't going to spread every time. It could do, there will be other things that it will do. Interfering with the player, breaking down connections, re-establishing connections, interfering with firewalls could be something that it could do, because the player's mechanic, some of them is, setting up firewalls on a node so that as it tries to spread, you've protected that node. You're thinking, there's a couple different ones. Reversey is one of them. I think that might be the one you're thinking. But they all do similar things with stones flipping over. Could have it be similar to that. Finishing FF6, I will be eventually. Tonight, maybe? I'm really hungry right now. I have no idea why I would be. Go figure. An inexorable wave of stones encroaching on the hacker. You can't stop it, only delay it. That is essentially what it is, yes. It is an inevitable wave of virus that can't be held out forever, period. And it is a turn number that you're trying to reach as you wait for the seller or the buyer to come and get the data from you. So you just have to hold out against it for that long. So it won't always be spreading. Sometimes it'll be, I just had a good one and then I completely lost it. But you get my point. Could be severing lines, could be reestablishing lines. Maybe even setting up its own firewalls, but touching it dumps the player, so that doesn't matter. Okay.
Yeah, there's always like other stuff we could add, like a player-based AI that starts doing the same thing, where it's pathing out, and then that AI can, prevent it from spreading. But it's complicated at that point, but you never know when you play test it a few times. If you feel like there's something missing, you can always kind of add that last bit of complicated flavor.
Absolutely. Yeah, do remember that everything said right now in design is fluid. Yep. Oh, you've already won that one? I know it was already won once, but it was actually you that got it, I think. Yeah. Right. Allow dead players no. What happens is the player gets dumped out of the internet, right? So you're not dead, you just get dump shock, so you get taken off the board. Each character will have its own dump shock effect, basically. So like, if your job is to set up the firewalls, maybe all the firewalls get taken down when you get dumped. And then you're back in like a turn or two. Because it's cooperative. We didn't want it to be one of those games where you're cooperating with your buddies and you get killed right away because you did something risky, and then you don't get to play for the rest of the game. So no, if you do something risky, there's a negative effect on the game, but you still get to participate in it. And the other ones were Cuddles and Snow Penguin, which are names we see fairly often. Although Cuddles has another name on there. We'll have to remember. Everyone try to remember the next time you see Cuddles that we have to give Cuddles free games. You guys ever played Uplink? I don't think I have.
I don't think I have either. I think I'm pretty sure I've heard of it. The name sounds super familiar.
I think I even said something to Cuddles, but then they didn't get it. We'll figure it out. We'll figure it out. It'll happen. I'll make it happen. It'll get done. Okay. I guess I gotta go eat dinner. That's about the end of this show. Next week will be sounds similar to what you guys are describing for a board game. Awesome. Cool. We made a game that exists and we didn't even know it. Good ideas are good ideas. You can't stop them. That just proves it. Yeah, I know. I understand similar. I was making a joke. But it does show that good ideas can't be stopped. Just because one person gets stopped from it. Can I post a YouTube link? Sure, go ahead. That's every game nowadays. That's everything nowadays. Everything's inspired by just a bunch of other stuff put together. That's how it is. It's how it's always been, though.
Turns out I own it, so I could actually play and try that out next week.
That's hilarious. Yeah, join the Discord posted in there too. Our Discord is an interesting place. I work in software. Pseudo works in software. We have a third member, Rage, who also works in software. We all you're on the Discord. Awesome. Yeah, we all like to design. So, oh, right. Okay. Brain just made the connection. You just followed now, so it linked you as a new person. It hadn't made that jump yet. Yeah, no, I remember it all now. Yes. It happens. I'm not always the sharpest in the memory department. I may have a couple excuses, but I don't use them. All right. Thank you very much for joining this afternoon. I hope to be back with more games. If I don't do ROR 2, which I really want to do, but I don't like to play by myself, I'll probably do some FF6, finish it up. We've only got one dungeon in Kefka's Castle done. Posted in Game Memes and Tech. Awesome. I'm going to go check that out too after I eat some food. So thank you very much for joining. I'm Deus.
And I'm Pseudo.
May all your shots be headshots.